what I'm going to do now is if you could write this down or type it on your computer, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of questions and then you answer whichever one you want to answer. Okay. So I'm going to give you a whole bunch of questions, 16 of them, and then you answer which ones you feel you're drawn to answer. Okay. So here we go. Question number 1. Is it more powerful to ground in water? Like if we could go in an ocean or a lake, is that better than just walking on the dirt? Do I get extra benefit if I go into the ocean or into a bay or something? Number 2, question number 2, is there anything we could do to improve our memory? Number 3, what is our basic dental protocol? What are the basics of brushing, flossing, x-rays, teeth? What is the protocol that everyone who wants to avoid dental problems will have? Number 4, is a far-red-infrared sauna recommended and necessary part of our daily regime? Are we trying to do this every day? Is this a goal? Number 5, am I supposed to be drinking 6 glasses of water a day, or is that just something that my mom says to do? I mean, is this something that is really actually a good protocol? Number 6, what type of water do we drink? For people that don't have the mindset to go and find their own water sources, what do what do we recommend? We live in the age of Amazon. People are at home. They like to order things. What do you do for water? What's the best thing? Number 7, are there any recommendations on water filters? Is there any specific type, a distiller? Is there anything you recommend with water filters? Number 8, are colonics supposed to be part of our life? A lot of us hope you say no. We're not really anxious to do colonics, but is this something that you consider a necessary part? Number 9, is iodine something important? I know a woman who insists this is the most critical and crucial thing, and she sells an iodine, and she absolutely constantly tells me that we need iodine to fill the receptor before something else does that's bad. So iodine. Number 10, are we supposed to be taking probiotics every day? Number 11, Dr. Goldhamer says no salt. Is this, other people I've heard in the past said no salt's okay. What is the thinking about salt? Number 12, where are we on sunlight? Am I trying every day to get as much sunlight as I can? Am I trying only to do it with a hat? Where do we stand with sunlight? Number 13, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be thinking about my thyroid. Every now and then, most of the time I forget about it. And then every now and then someone says something and I think, is there something I'm supposed to be doing to take better care of my thyroid? Number 14, Brian Clement from the Hippocrates Health Institute says that, and Gabriel Cousins, but especially Brian, have said that fruit feeds yeast mold, fungus, sugar, and candida. And they said that Thomas Seyfried from Boston College confirms this. And a lot of us who have followed Brian and his sprouting have been very uncomfortable eating fruit for this reason, because we think it feeds yeast, mold, fungus, candida, and cancers. And number 15, is there a special protocol or recommendation on getting rid of the heavy metals and toxins? Should we be taking a certain type of bath? Is there certain type of herbs or supplements we should put in the bath? Or are we supposed to be, is there a way to deal with these heavy metals and to get all this stuff that's in the environment out of our bodies? So please answer any of these that you'd like to answer in any order that you're comfortable with. We'd like to get an answer to all 15 of these questions.
Since you did the dental one first, I think you did basic dental protocol.
Yep.
Was that the first one?
Any order you want, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I'll jump in on that just to get that out of the way. I saw in the chat, somebody even repeated what I said, make peace with your microbes. The reality is your dental protocol, I see people trying to sterilize them out. Like you have dental hygienists who are, militant about brushing and flossing and flushing and brushing and brushing, and I was on the Dr. Oz show once, and Dr. Oz said, do you have to floss, or can you use a little pick, or is it flossing or picks or this and that? It was like ridiculous. And I said, Dr. Oz, basic maintenance, like, diets. Food that lays between your teeth is like the garbage between tenements in buildings in Brooklyn on a hot summer day. Eventually it starts to smell and then the rats come out. I said, that's why we need to do something called debridement, once every 24 hours, debridement. The important thing about a dental protocol, and I have 4 things. First, go in your medicine cabinet and take out any commercial toothpaste, take out any commercial mouthwash. This whole idea of people addicted to mouthwash, it's because their microbiome's out of balance. So what you really want to do is have a very gentle cleansing approach. I don't care if you use a dry toothbrush and have a good diet. I mean, I developed a prebiotic toothpaste because over 80% of the people on this program have some stage of gum disease. That's the statistic, 80%, because everything we've been doing is wrong. And you need to reduce stress, you need to exercise regularly. This is all part of a healthy mouth. So what I want to just, one big thing that jumped out at me was about heavy metals and toxins and whether you take these baths and whatever you do to get heavy metals out. Getting heavy metals out of the body, and I know a lot about this because I work a lot with functional medicine doctors, excuse me, who refer patients to me to get the mercury out of their mouth. So you cannot get it out of your body if you still have it in your teeth, number one. Number two, heavy metals are not just in fillings. It's in nickel cadmium crowns that have porcelain on top, called PFMs. It's in, they put lead in porcelain to make it more reflective. So you got to make sure you have porcelain that is, either lead-free, and so heavy metals is a hot topic because it's very debilitating to thyroid. By the way, talked about thyroid dysregulation. Whenever I see people with thyroid dysregulation, I always think of heavy metals. To get mercury out of the body, and by the way, it doesn't stay in your blood, it goes right past the blood-brain barrier. It goes right into cells. Getting mercury out of the body is like peeling layers of an onion. Slow and steady, not rapid. I had a patient come into me. He had 80 IV chelations in 1 year, 80, trying to get mercury out. And all he was doing was redistributing it around the body. So I know Dr. Pai would probably be right in my corner on this, but those are the ones that jumped out at me. I don't really going to give everybody else a chance at this point.
I can talk about water. I mean, you think about the most natural water would be rainwater if the environment wasn't polluted. And that is, in fact, distilled water. That's what rainwater is distilled water. We don't have a pristine environment, so now we'll use technology to distill water, but it's the purest water. And you're drinking water for the H2O. You're not drinking water for the contaminant minerals or heavy metals or other things that might be carried along with it. You get more minerals in the fruits and vegetables you eat than you're going to have to, rather than the micro amounts, you might pick up some trace minerals in the water. So we recommend highly purified water. It doesn't have to be distilled. It could be highly purified by reverse osmosis or other types of filtration. You just don't want to drink municipal water with the hydrogenated halocarbons and the interaction with the chlorine and all the other stuff, the fluoride and God knows what else they're putting in the public water now. So some kind of highly purified, the purest of the water is distilled water, which is why in our laboratory, when we're doing research, we use distilled water because it's the purest water. It's the same water we use, and from the same machines, by the way, that we use with our patients and that we use for cooking and the rest of it. So my advice is just use pure water. The purest of the pure is distilled water. And as far as drinking 6 or 8 or 50 glasses of water a day, you do need a significant water intake, it can either come from the plants you eat in the forms of fruits and vegetables, or if you don't get enough fruits and vegetables, you can take additional water in, hopefully pure water in your diet. But to say that everybody needs X amount of water is ridiculous, because some people get a tremendously high water content from eating 2 pounds of salad and 3 pounds of fruit a day. And so or vice versa. And their water intake is going to be lower. If you're sweating, if you're exercising, your water intake is going to be higher. So it's going to be an individual thing. But the idea is maintaining hydration is important. And oftentimes people that are dehydrated, usually because of poor dietary choices, may get symptomatic relief by increasing their hydration.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
I'll
jump
say,
in.
I'll,
Oh, go ahead, doctor.
Now, I'll just say on the water thing, I always tell my patients, I sit down whenever I'm doing the consultation, we look up environmental working group, ewg.org, look at the water database, look at what their municipal water is, and you'll see like every city is different, every place is different, what toxins and how high they are. And then also show you like what a carbon filter, like some people can just have the back of the refrigerator or like kind of Brita Pure, they can use that, or what reverse osmosis will, because some things don't get out through the carbon filter, right? So, but really it's based on what their area is and what their exposure really is, depending on how far they need to go. Because I had someone like a few weeks ago and they were from a small town. Their water only had 4 contaminants. I was like, wow, that's the healthiest water I've seen in America, And then, but then like I'm in Albuquerque, we got like 30 contaminants, and there's other places that they have, I had some last week and they had the PUFAs were off the chart. They live downstream from one of the big chemical companies that are dumping that. So yes, I mean, they're not going to test for everything, obviously, right?
Well,
so there's going to be certain things that are going to be outside, but the idea is that I always want people like, don't drink from the tap. That's the first thing. But also don't buy bottled water also, right? We understand now, just last week, the study came out with microplastics being found in the blood, right? So 80% of the healthy volunteers, young patients, have microplastics now floating around in the blood. Why most of it's coming from BP, plastic bottles that we're just drinking bottled water. Everything's being in a package, or sodas, and everything is packaged. So trying to just getting a filter of any kind is going to be beneficial first and foremost. And that always comes out more cost effective than having more plastic and more other kind of contaminants. Usually it's municipal just filtering. So why don't you just get your own filter and save, it usually costs about 2 cents per gallon when you buy a filter of any kind, usually when you cost it out. And yet people are spending like $5 a bottle of water. It's insane, right? And also, I just want to make sure on the water thing, not to alkalinize water. Alkalinizing water also changes your microbiome and causes all sorts of problems. So don't fall into that magic little marketing deception of like, oh, well, you got to have, because you need to be alkaline, so we need to drink alkaline water. Don't do that, right? Nature intended water to have a normal pH, give or take, depending on where you live. But all these high alkaline waters is just a highly marketed, highly profitable product that actually causes more harm than good.
Thank you.
David, you were going to say something.
Okay, yep. I'm just getting my mute button off. Okay, so let's look at what we got here. Let's see. Memory. That one brought up an interesting thought. Rudolf Steiner's take on memory was that we're basically a plant walking upside down, so that this is the roots and this is the trunk sticking out, and here's the branches, and you can probably guess where the fruits and flowers are. And this is also interesting too, related to thyroid, because if you go out to a tree, the place of really high charge is in the stump of the tree, in the just as it's coming out of the ground. And that's kind of like right here, our thyroid, super high negative charge. Back in the old days when we were first playing around with Clint Ober's grounding material, and I'm always using it. So we would take something like this. So this is my little grounding pad right here, but we would literally take one of these little silver little bands and put it around the neck and literally plug right into the thyroid from the ground. So just right into the ground, right into here, and just see what happens. It's pretty intense, I have to say. You do that for a while. Most people can't handle it for very long because their thyroid is really suffering from a deficiency of negatively charged electricity. Now, when we get into this thing about, okay, what for memory, Rudolf Steiner said roots. So I really started going into that. I started going like, yeah, let me diversify the roots I'm eating. Astragalus and sweet potato and lotus root and burdock root and radishes and onions, and the list goes on. And we could just think, I'm growing ashwagandha in the backyard here. It just goes on and on. There's just so many roots. So I try to maintain a diversity. Another thing I'm growing over here is Hoshu Wu or Hishu Wu, another famous root in the buckwheat family. And there's just so many different types of roots. And I've found that if you eat lots of different types of roots, it really does help you to think differently. This is above and beyond the ideas of like DHA for the brain, which I'm very into. I think the long chain omega-3 fatty acid is really powerful, DHA in particular, and EPA is powerful too, and ALA is very important. So I always talk about the 3 omega-3s. And the ability of your body to use DHA to create a healthier growing baby, for example, is well shown in the literature and well known, and that postpartum depression has to do with the DHA that gets pulled out of the mother that goes into the baby. So we always want to have a surplus of DHA. One of the best sources of it is where it comes from, which is plankton in the ocean. And so people got onto that. Really was Jacques Cousteau kind of was like, let's go to the source. And he pointed out numerous edible plankton out of the ocean. There's enormous operations going on all over the world now that produce DHA as an algae oil rather than as a fish oil. There's also some DHA, a small amount, it's about 7% in AFA blue-green algae, and there's even some in spirulina. So those are sources of it as well. So those are things that have come up for me in terms of mental fitness and memory. And of course, there's the memory herbs like ginkgo and gachu kola, and those are always great as well. So I'd throw those in the mix. What else? Enemas, colonics, Kalima boards. This came up when I was doing my talk the other day. And basically, when you get into a fast, you don't want to be bathing in your own waste. So typically when people get into a fast, they clench down and they grip and they get constipated. And that's very troublesome and makes the fast much more difficult. And you're basically bathing in your own waste. So if you need an enema or a colonic or a Kalima board to get that waste out and overcome the mind, which is trying to get into a holding pattern, that's critical. I think that's a critical piece of the puzzle. So you're not bathing in your own waste and the waste is moving out. We usually do 3-week cleanses 4 times a year. And the first week, it goes longer, it really goes a month because you have to work your way back out slowly. But the first week I would get one colonic, second week another colonic, third week another colonic, so I'm emptied out. And that's about as much colonics as I do. I'm not like in the colonics every day or enemas every day. I know people who do enemas every day, coffee enemas every day, who are the most fit, unbelievable specimens you've ever seen in your life. I don't personally think that's the right thing for everybody because it's really overcoming your natural ability to eliminate. And you want to also work with the apana, which is that downward moving force we talk about in yoga, where you're basically using those natural forces that are creating peristalsis. So that was something I wanted to get into. Sunlight. Should we get more sunlight? I think you need more sunlight. Is there too much? Absolutely. It's just like anything else in life. You can have too much water and drown. So you want to have the right amount of sunlight for your body, for your skin type. You don't want to fry your skin every day. You want to make sure that you have healthy skin. So you got to get the right amount. We recommend at least 30 minutes a day. If you can get full direct skin on most of your naked body, 30 minutes a day, I think you're in great shape. And you can do that even in the snow. We work our way up in the snow. We work our way up to being able to handle being out there with just shorts on. And it takes a little while, but you can get there and you can get out there for even hours after a while with just shorts on once you get used to it and get that sun on your body, even in winter. What else? We touched on thyroid. There's fruit. I want to get on this fruit feeding mold and yeast. And the answer is sure. Yeah. If somebody comes in, let's say somebody's full of mold and yeast, they suddenly start eating sugar and honey. Terrible idea. It's not appropriate. You really have to be aware of the individual nature of each person's history and metabolism. And some people have a much harder time with mold and yeast in their system than others. Some people switch their diet around. They sort it out. Their immune system takes over. Their microbiome sorts itself out much easier. Some people it goes on as a year-to-year battle that continues on, and it's just a tough battle. But step by step by step, it improves. Some of the best things I've seen against Candida I really like certain herbs against candida, like pau d'arco, and I really like yatoba, which are two Amazonian tree barks. Other things that are good against candida is horsetail, which I like horsetail tea a lot, but somewhat of a toxic herb. But if you do it as a tea, you're killing off that B1 inhibitor. And then the other thing I would say about that is the right kind of probiotics. And the probiotics I'd recommend, I really like the kefir starters that Donna Gates puts out against really, really intractable candida cases. Seems to be one of the best ways to go. So those are some of my answers to the questions.
So I want to chime back in. Sorry, Clint, if you want to go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, going back to colonics, no, I don't agree with them. Why? Because we can test them before and after on the microbiome. It's dysfunctional.
Right.
Water is a drying agent to the colon. And so that chronic enema use, putting 16, up to 16 gallons of water, you're flushing out your microbiome. You can't take, if you go back to my microbiome lecture just the other day, I'll go into that in detail and I even, show you all these pictures, but you can't just take probiotics. You have, Alan mentioned, but you have about 4 to 5 pounds of probiotic in your gut. You have 100 trillion of over 1,000 species. And then, you go to a colon hydrotherapist, you flush out, and then they give you a little probiotic of like a 10 billion or something like that of a few species, if that, and it's not acid. And so you're not going to really replenish that. We're not meant to be going to like a Jiffy Lube and flushing out. That's just the whole, again, going back to this question concept, like I've done really bad. I've not changed my lifestyle. I don't really feel like changing my lifestyle enough. So I just want to do this thing where I can kind of detox, cleanse, and, be with it and then go back to my lifestyle. It's like, no, if you're eating your whole food plant-based diet, you're getting your 35 grams of fiber or more a day. Detoxification is having 1 to 3 form well bowel movements every day. That's detoxification on the simplest, most natural way. Having someone having to, and then with the coffee enemas, don't even get me started with that. We even have patients who were plant-based, used to be colonic junkies, and still get colon cancer, by the way. It causes serious dysfunction. And we can show right before and after, here's someone's microbiome being wiped out. Here's the inflammatory markers coming up. Here's even now through colonoscopy. So we test those things. Now, when it comes to fruit and yeast and all these other things, I have a different take on that. Because remember, we still have the phytonutrients, we have the antioxidants that come from fruits, right? Nature is kind to us. Everybody's trying to cheat nature or biohack the body. You can't biohack the body. You have to follow the laws of nature. If you follow the laws of nature, your health will be rewarded in kind. When you try to cheat nature, which is right now, biohacking is huge. I just saw the advertising the other day. Biohacking conference, go to Cancun, blah, blah. It's like, and all these people have terrible problems, but they promote things, they sell things, they look inflamed, they are inflamed, they don't look healthy, they don't feel healthy, but they're really big marketers. And I see all these people selling all sorts of programs and products. It's like, you have to go back to the simple basics. Are you eating the foods that feed your microbiome or not? Are you eating anti-inflammatory foods or pro-inflammatory foods? In my lecture, I have this one slide. I'll show it again on Thursday. There's one slide. You just look at the slide, it's pro-inflammatory, anti-inflammatory, and you're just done. Like, you can walk away from any discussion from there on. You don't have to have science behind it. It's 20 simple things. Because if you understand that basic element of what causes inflammation and what doesn't on a food standpoint, then, there's no other, what do I need? What kind of product? How much sauna? This is all nitty. This is like wasting time. Because that's where people want to say, I just did this and I don't have to do anything else in my lifestyle, right? Like, everybody wants that magic bullet or smoking gun kind of thing. It's like, no, we shouldn't be having any of that. We need to change the epigenetics, and everybody's always looking for a quick fix. And at the end of the day, I would say, when we see like even cancer patients, like, oh, you can't have the fruit because of the sugar. No. Now, the thing is, I still want them getting whole foods. I don't want them getting like highly refined juices and stuff like that. And yes, to mention to David, if someone has a candida overgrowth, can some of these things actually make them feel a little bit worse? Absolutely. But do I restrict it out of the diet? No, we want it. We test for it. We look for it. We fix their microbiome. We fix the overgrowths or dysbiosis or their SIBOs or this. And we actually test for sensitivity and resistance. I don't just give what I want. I give what actually shows to be working, because the reason is everybody's taking things naturally more than they should. Everybody's taking natural oregano and uva ursis and berberines and all. This is all becoming more and more resistant. And we will find now on the test things that we used to use 10, 15 years ago very well, which were like a magic, here's a natural antimicrobial, right now is having a lot of resistance. So we always want to give targeted therapies. The reason being is because anything that's a natural antimicrobial knocks out the good sides as well as the bad. So everybody wants to think like a knockout bad stuff, good, whether it's a prescription, whether it's natural. But if you're not looking at that, natural antimicrobials are the same thing, whether it's coming from Pfizer or coming from the farm, antimicrobials, antimicrobial. People don't understand that because they think, well, I'm just taking this thing. I'm going to take this for 6 months. I'm taking my candida cleanse, my parasite cleanse or whatever. It's like, you don't take amoxicillin for 6 months, do you? No, that would be terrible. I would do that. It would destroy my microbiome. So why would you take the herbs that way? Right? Like we have to understand like the mechanism of action is mechanism of action. The problem is a lot of people want to just do natural things to say, well, there's no harm with that. No, I can give you poison from natural products, you know? And so the idea is like, it's understanding, like if you understand the science behind the body, or you have someone to help you with guidance with that, it makes it a lot easier. We don't have to have people have candida for years and years and years and years and years. They usually have biofilms. They usually have other things. If you disrupt that, there's a whole system of actually getting to the root cause of it and restoring that and then moving on. But the problem is a lot of people will suck you into this world of constant, like, I got to do this, I got to do that, come do this, come do that, take this, take that. That to me is a waste of time. What you want to do is you want to get to the root cause, fix it, solve it, and then get on to optimum health.
The question comes up about added salt. You know, you can, the same thing with salt, with sugar, with oil, you get the essential fatty acids you need from a whole plant food diet. You get the carbohydrate you need from a whole plant food diet. And you get the sodium you need from a whole plant food diet. All of these nutrients are necessary, but you don't need them in a fractionated form that's added to the food. And now people are kind of realizing, okay, you don't have to have added oil in order to get your fats, and you don't have to eat sugar in order to get your carbohydrate. And eventually they'll figure out you don't need to be adding salt in order to get enough sodium in your diet by eating a plant-rich diet that is naturally going to get you enough, but not too much sodium.
Cool. I guess I've left. I'll take grounding in water versus being equal to any other form. The thing grounding is really a challenge to understand because it's simple, but on the other hand, it's a little bit complicated. For instance, the issue, it has more to do with skin resistance than it does with the moisture of the soil, because the surface of your skin, like on your arm, would be maybe 5 megaohms of resistance. Well, that's not conductive. On the bottom of your feet, on the average, it'll be 250K of resistance. That's more conductive, but it almost leads to what we call dissipative, meaning electrons they migrate into the body. They don't just rush in, but they migrate fast. And so the issue is being in water, salt water is good. You're 100% grounded. You're gonna get significant benefit. But on the average, no matter where you live, if you put your bare feet on the earth and just stand there, you've got 100, 200 pounds of weight. So you have a good connection with the earth. There's moisture in almost everything, some amount of moisture, even in the desert, where we've done a lot of experiments in the sand. There's still ground. It may not be, again, it gets technical, but we're talking about grounding a body. We're not talking about grounding an electrical distribution system or a cable system. But anyhow, the body doesn't need all that much ground. It just needs access to free electrons. It needs to be able to equalize with the earth and absorb electrons as they are needed, and or distribute electrons. I mean, electrons can go in or out of the body depending on what you eat, what you're doing, and so on. But it's maintaining your body with a negative charge, so you have a significant or sufficient supply of redox potential to normalize the functioning of all body systems. And I wanted to throw out a couple of things too, just real quick. One thing we noticed in our blood studies, in the blood viscosity studies, where the blood separates and the electrical surface charge increases almost 300%. These studies are all available, by the way. And but one thing we noticed by accident was that a half hour or 2 hours after grounding and drawing the blood and looking at the blood before and after, we noticed that there's a significant reduction, if not a total reduction, in candida and fibrogen. Now, explain that. I mean, that has to do with a whole lot of things. But on the other hand, when you ground the body, you're putting a negative charge on. We've measured red blood cells, but we know that every other cell in the body becomes more negative also on the surface. That's why it's easier for a lot of people to get up when they're grounded, because there's this electro repulsion that takes place in everything in the body. This is weird stuff compared to what everybody's talking about. But anyhow, so grounding, any amount of grounding is good. If it's even in the desert, just kick a couple inches of sand away, there's moisture. But there's ground all around the world. And the amount of ground that an animal needs, or a human being, is not a whole lot in electrons, but it's absolutely, when you don't have them, there's real harm. But anyhow, the point is, any amount of grounding is good, and the body will absorb whatever electrons it needs and equalize with the earth quite rapidly. I mean, within nanoseconds. And we even put a 100K resistor in it to slow any current down or any flow down. You don't have flow with ground. What you have is equalization. You have what's the word? Distribution. I mean, you equalize. It's not a flow. You have to have a circuit. There is no circuit when you ground the body. The body is a dipole, and it's going to equalize with the earth and maintain a negative charge, meaning you have a reservoir of free electrons to reduce any of the radicals that are not reduced in normal biological activities. So, the whole concept behind grounding is very simple. Our working hypothesis is very simple, that, grounding normalizes the electrical functioning of all body systems, and it does. And it returns when you restore the immune system, and the immune system returns the body to health. And you do need all the things that everybody's talking about here, but grounding is fundamental and it's overlooked. So no matter what you do with patients, I can tell you this, after 25 years, you're going to have better outcomes if you can get them to take their shoes off, spend 30 minutes on the earth occasionally here and there, especially at night after work.